Mansionization was a major topic at this special town meeting. After months of work since annual town meeting last spring, the Planning Board presented Article 3, which calls for reviews of larger home building projects in Wellesley.
The concern about increasing home size, at least in Wellesley, goes back 20 years or more, as does the trend to larger homes. The Planning Board, previous planning boards, sought to make changes to the zoning bylaw, brought measures to town meeting, some of which were adopted, some of which were not. So Planning Board hasn't been led to do this by any particular event, say in the last year or two, but the opinion survey that the Planning Board had done for the last comprehensive plan update, which was in the last couple of years, highlighted large houses and neighborhood character as major concerns of the town and really high priority items.
The high land values have meant that the value of the land is more than the value of the house. So when that happens and the builder that let's say is involved in it takes the house down and puts on a new house because what they've bought is the land.
Last month, the League of Women Voters produced a show here at WCAC where the Planning Board had a chance to come on and explain some of the rationale behind this new article.
We developed the median existing home size for each district.
Existing
Okay. Homes, to get an idea of how big are the typical houses in town today. And we found that, for instance, the median home in the 10,000-foot district is 1,796 square feet. It's a very significant number because the 10,000-foot district constitutes 52% of the single homes in town. So it's the most significant district. We also found that in the 15,000-foot district, the median home size was 2,144 square feet. Median home size, for instance, in that 10,000-foot district has gone from a little over 3,000 square feet in 2000 to well in excess of 4,000 square feet last year, 2006. That tells us that the trend towards increasingly large homes is certainly a real one. And if you compare it to the existing home size, which is shown in red on the chart, you'll see that in the single residence district, the median new home is more than twice as large as the typical existing home.
Using this information, the Planning Board came up with thresholds for each district, which when exceeded through new construction or add-ons would trigger a large house review. This review would take into account preservation of landscape, relation of the building to its surroundings, open space, and vehicle and pedestrian impacts on neighbors. Within 90 days, the Planning Board would accept or reject the building plans.
Initially, we had proposed to do this through a less formal meeting process, not to have a public hearing process, simply to require the developer or the homeowner to come into the DRB and then to Planning Board to explain their proposal, show how it would affect their neighbors, and leave it to the discretion of the boards to make to add requirements. But that was probably too cautious on our part. Early on, as we were developing this, we got input from advisory, from people who attended some of our early public hearings, who felt that this wouldn't be a useful process unless we made it a public hearing process. So we added that there would be notice given to abutters and to abutters within 300 feet of abutters to allow them to come into a public hearing, offer their comments on a proposed design. And of course the wisdom of that is that people who live in the area are going to know best, or maybe have the best sense of what impact might be or what the issues are that concern the neighborhood. So it's probably very valuable for the decision-making process, and I think in terms of fairness and transparency, it's also essential.
Other support came from Wellesley's selectmen. On October 9th, the board decided to come out publicly at town meeting in support of this new article.
I see this as an extension of the town's pioneering efforts back in the 1920s to enact zoning for the benefit of the town. I see this as beneficial to the town, and so I'm delighted that the board as a whole feels similarly and that agree that it is appropriate for us to be supportive of the planning board in this motion, because too often there's been slippage when these issues come to town meeting, and I think perhaps now the time is right for such a proposal, so I'm in favor of it.
Not everyone was on board with Article 3, however. Building Wellesley's Future is an organization of citizens, builders, and realtors who argued publicly that Article 3 would go too far. In the weeks before the special town meeting, you may have seen their ads like this one in the Townsman.
I think that the town could work with the builders, and I know the builders have already proposed a compromise position that absolutely reduces what you can build on any lot in Wellesley. And what it does, by doing that, it takes the guesswork out of what you might be able to build. So, you know, a seller would know, you know, what their house could command in the market if they were to sell it, because they would know that it can't be built over a certain limit.
Local builder Joe Grignafini was the author of this counter-proposal.
I'm in the 10,000-foot zone, but I have a 20,000-foot lot. My house would be over the 3,600 feet because I have a larger garage and I have, you know, 3,700 square feet of living space, so that I would have to go to site plan review on my house.
But despite this opposition, Tom Frassardi insisted that large house review could work in Wellesley.
The town has been reviewing projects under similar standards for years, and as an example, Zoning Board of Appeals reviews projects or alterations of existing non-conforming homes, meaning homes that were built and then became non-conforming because the zoning bylaw changed. The Zoning Board of Appeals has been reviewing those to determine whether the alterations are, quote, substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood for years, and has found that subjective sounding standard to be very workable in practice. In 2001, there were 40 teardowns. In 2002, there were 33. In 2004, there were 61. In 2005, 59.
At special town meeting, passionate arguments came from both sides.
If I go 5 blocks in one direction, I run into Roberts Road, where the average house is 1,900 square feet. If I go 5 blocks in the other direction, I find Pierce Road, where the average home is over 6,000 square feet. And based upon the way this bylaw is structured, those homes are considered in the same neighborhood. And I really don't think that the same threshold should exist. I don't believe it's fair to Roberts Road, because potentially a very, very large house could be built without review, where on the other hand, at the other end of the district, you know, would be subject to a review to build a house that's smaller than your neighbors.
The issue is not just size, but also the cumulative impact of size, design, form, massing, bulk, site, siting, topography, landscaping, open space on the community, neighborhood, and its abutters. As proposed, the large house review size is merely a trigger to that issue of someone who has a 21,000 square foot lot. Clearly, the trigger would set off the review, but a much larger house would probably be allowed there than on a smaller lot.
But ultimately, the vote was in support of Article 3. Following the special town meeting, both Ernie Corrigan and Tom Frassardi wrote op-eds in the Townsman.
I noted that there was a letter in the Townsman last week where the builders community has offered to work with the planning board as they go through regulations on the large house review, and I think that's a very positive and good step, and hope that we'll see some good work coming out of that effort.
This is a process. I think the town has committed itself to a process that presumably was going to go on for a long time. and the changes will be incremental. What it will do is it'll establish a process for neighbors to be actually very well informed of projects in their neighborhood, and in a sense become participants in the process. I think it's incumbent on the town officials to, monitor that and make sure that things are in a obviously always in a controlled environment, so to speak. But I don't think that's going to be a problem, and I think that people will probably appreciate the level of review that in fact does occur.
The new zoning amendment goes into effect on January 1st of next year. If you need more information, contact the Planning Department at 781-431-1019, extension 2232, or visit the town's website. For Inside Wellesley, I'm Jessica Schumann.